Welcome everyone to the Taming Family Search Goliath. We are happy to have you here today. We are going to be learning the Quick Start Guide for Family Tree. Carol Hansen will be our presenter. She is a family history consultant in the West Richland Desert Hills Ward. Carol will let you kind of review what we've done in the past and introduce your work today.
Welcome everyone. In Class 1, we were introduced to indexing written vital records so that they are accessible to researchers like us online. And in this class, which is a quick start guide for FamilySearch Family Tree, we're going to cover essentially three things that all users need to know. We're going to talk about getting a username and password. We're going to complete an orientation to the person page where the majority of work in FamilySearch is actually completed. And we're going to learn about connecting your closest deceased ancestor to existing data that's already in the database. This class is intended as an opportunity for people who are new to FamilySearch Family Tree to come up to speed quickly so that they are comfortable and competent in completing classes 3 through 9 if they wish. Part 1 of this class is about getting a password in FamilySearch. The website where we go to use FamilySearch is www.familysearch.org. We want to make it very clear that this database is available to both LDS and non-LDS family history researchers. It is completely free, and it is, at the present time, it is working beautifully and has many major features that will help you in your research. If you want to get a password to the database, you simply go to that website, and in the extreme upper right-hand corner of the screen, you see and click on the little button that says Free Account. You're going to be asked to put in a username and a password. I cannot encourage you enough to write that down as you record it. So many folks believe that they will remember and do not. And it's quite time-consuming to retrieve those if they are lost, so I urge you to write it down. You might choose to keep a copy of that in your wallet or your purse, and also a separate copy somewhere in your home office. Be aware, please, that if you are LDS and you have a username and password for LDS.org or the Church Distribution Center, etc., those same username and password, that same username and password combination also gives you access to FamilySearch.org, so you don't need a new password for this database. Since it is becoming increasingly complex to sort out the steps that are needed for people to retrieve their password and username, or to change their password and username, and in some cases email address, I've simply created a handout for you that you should have downloaded in anticipation of this class. And you will note if you look at it that there is one page for non-LDS contributors and another for LDS contributors. And the only reason for that difference is that the passwords and usernames for LDS contributors do have multiple functions in different databases. And so there's a different process for them to make the same changes that we can normally do in FamilySearch without any other intervention. I want to emphasize this was just created yesterday, and it is current at this time to the best of my knowledge, but it is in beta testing, so if there are challenges, we would appreciate your bearing with us while we get that perfected. Sorry, there was a little glitch in our technology there. I think we've got it under control now. What's going on here? Bear with us just a moment, if you will, please. Okay, I think we're back in business. So before we proceed on to the next phase of our class here tonight. I just wanted to ask if there are any questions on setting up a username or password. Anybody have any issues with that? Okay, we'll move directly then into part 2, which is a navigation guide for the person page. And the first step, of course, is getting there from the sign-in screen. So let's assume that you have signed in. I'm going to be inviting you to look at what we call the basic navigation ribbon. That's these words right along here. Don't be too concerned. I'm going to take you to the person page in just a moment, but this is what we're going to be talking about. The words family tree are what we press on in order to go to a person page through either your pedigree chart or by searching by name or ID number. We'll be looking at the memories capability of this database in Class 4. We'll be talking about search options in Class 6 when we're looking for records. In Class 1, we talked about the indexing opportunities that are available to anyone who's willing to contribute their time and energy. And in Class 7, we're going to talk about LDS temple family ordinances. So let's actually go to a person page. Hopefully you've all got your handouts that include the slides that I have provided for you here. The reason I gave those to you is so that you would have something larger in front of you that you could actually look at than the PowerPoint screen or the FamilySearch screen. So I'm going to invite you to be looking at your handouts while I go to FamilySearch and we actually have a chance to see this stuff live. Ideally this will work. Oh dear, oh dear. Here we go. Now we're ready. All right. So here we are in a person page. This is where we were just talking about a moment ago. You get a free account to FamilySearch. If you had put in your username and password, you would be able to do the same thing I'm able to do right now, which is simply and a password. Sign in. Depending on whether or not you've been in FamilySearch recently, what you may be seeing here might be different than what I'm showing you. This is the older and more traditional dashboard, they call it. There is a new, more experimental version of the dashboard available. If you see that one instead of this one, don't be concerned by the difference in the pictures. Just notice this block of words right up here that we're going to be using together. Here is family tree. If I want to go to a person page, I can either go to my pedigree chart or to the last person I was working on, or I can find a new person by either their name or their person identification number, which is assigned by this database. Since I have a specific person in mind, I'm going to go to a specific person by going to Find. I want to take you to the person page of the lady whose information is displayed on the PowerPoint slides you're seeing. Notice that I can find someone by their name, or I can click to the File Folder tab right next to it and find them by their ID number. In this location, I'm going to put this 7-digit ID number, which is KW8B8CY. I'll tell you where on the person page I found that, although I think you see that that's displayed in the screen. Once I put this in, it's giving me an opportunity to verify that that is in fact the person I intend to go to. If so, I simply click on her name, which gives me this little summary card we see so often in FamilySearch. And from there, I click on the word person right here to go to her person page. So I click on the name to get the summary card, and then I click on person to go to her person page. There we are. This is where I got that ID number I just used. That number can change as people are merged in the database because they are found to be duplicates. So it doesn't do a lot of good to memorize those numbers or to write them in a secret place where you can go back to them quickly. But it is useful in the short term. All right, so let's look at some of the features of the person page. This, as I've mentioned before, is where you're going to be doing most of the work that you are likely to do in FamilySearch and Family Tree. You notice that it's a very long page. Can be even longer when it's a big family, of course. Here at the top is the identifying information about the person. This is an opportunity for us to see her pedigree chart, starting with her as the focus person and with her parents, grandparents, and children all displayed. This is an opportunity for us to watch this person if it's someone that we're concerned people may be changing information on, and we want to be notified as soon as someone changes something. Here is where we go to see the memories, which are stories and photographs that have been attached to that person's page. And here is where we see status of temple ordinances if we are LDS church members subscribed to the FamilySearch database. Okay. Now let's look at the various aspects of this person page just to give you some idea of what's here. This life sketch section can be really useful for a number of different purposes. It can be used to write a short biography of the person. It can be used to add research notes that you want to call to the attention of other people who see this person page. It can even be a place where you discourage people from merging this person with someone else because of differences you have noted. So it's a multifunction location that is very useful and helpful. We'll talk about that more in our class on records and photographs. This is the vital information section of the person page. It's where we record the person's name at birth. Note, even for women, it's the woman's name at birth, and it stays that way throughout her lifetime. There's another place on the person page where we record other names by which she was known, including her nicknames. This is where we put her birth and her birth location. If we wanted to change that, we would simply click on something there and press the Edit button. Make the changes we wanted, standardize the information, which we will talk about next week and is very important, and then click Save, or in this case, since I've made no changes, click Cancel. I have created a box called an editing box in making that change, and I want to close that box. That's all I have to do to pull that off. The death location is the same, and there's a place here for burials. I do highly recommend that if you know the cemetery where your ancestor is buried, you add it here, because websites like Find a Grave are becoming such valuable resources for genealogists, since so many people who do not take the time to post what they know about a family in a database like FamilySearch are putting it in Find a Grave with the cemetery records for their family. Notice these little words right here, other information, and that's all it says. There's no location, there's no information there at all. That's because this little arrow is clicked to point toward the right. To display other information, I just unclick it, and now I can see that this woman was born Ruth Lorraine Werdeman, which, if that is the very same name she has up here, does not need to be down here. The database realizes that that is the case. Many people choose to put married names of an individual, and this is where nicknames belong. Any names that are put in this location, the other information section, will permit FamilySearch to search for that individual by any of those names and bring you to this person page, which is one of the best tools we have for preventing people from creating new duplicate people in the database. If I wanted to add something to this information, I would simply click the word Add. I could then click Alternate Name, and from there I have the opportunity of putting in a nickname. I'm going to cancel that because I don't have anything new to add. This information down in here has been added by the database as we have attached records to her person page. Because that's kind of cumbersome and makes the page longer, I'm going to close it again just by clicking that arrow. Once more, to open it, click the arrow, close it, click the arrow. Same thing for any of these. If you come into a family page and there are no family members displayed, for example, that's all that's happened. Just unclick that arrow. Okay, now, FamilySearch recognizes that an individual is actually part of two families during their lifetime. They are displayed in FamilySearch in this column as an adult individual with husband or wife and children. And right next to them in the right-hand column, they are displayed as a child in their parents' family with their siblings. This is actually a big advantage over databases like Ancestry, for example, where you only see the current family, the adult family of the individual without clicking on something else. In this case, this woman was actually married to two different women in her lifetime. We see that she was married to a Mr. Jewell. We haven't been able to find a marriage record yet, but when she married Mr. Bracher, she was shown as Werdeman Jewell, and then she was married later to Mr. Bracher. She had 4 children with Mr. Bracher. It's not displaying any children here with Mr. Jewell, and we would simply click this to see if in fact there are any children. Sometimes when you go into a page, it will look like this, and you'll say, oh, how come she's not shown as a child in that family? It's because that little arrow has been unclicked for space-saving reasons. This is, of course, where we add a marriage or a divorce or a common law marriage, etc. Okay, let's turn our attention now to the sources section. I think that's what's next in your PowerPoint slides. The sources section is a place where we can actually go to a record that has been attached to this person's page. Records can be attached as electronic copies. We can add a source. For example, if your mother has obtained a marriage record for one of your ancestors, you can actually scan that and add it to the person page and then type in the information you want to extract from that record. Or you can attach a record from a thing called a source box, and we will be talking about that in our later class on Prove It. Show me your source records. So let me show you just one of the records that's here. I can click on the name of this census record, and it's giving me an opportunity to go see the original document, which I very highly recommend that you do, because often there are relatives living nearby this individual that FamilySearch didn't know were related, number one, and number two, if there are family members in that family group that FamilySearch doesn't know what to do with, sometimes it just doesn't bother to tell you about them. And then there is a new thing, which is a typed index of what it's finding about that individual and about their family members in that record. Once again, an index is only as beneficial as FamilySearch was able to match family members from the record with your family group. So to close that, I simply come up here to the Close button and click it. There's an opportunity to put discussions here. Discussions were intended to be places where researchers who had different perspectives on a person's life events would add information to say, I differ with you on such and such, and it would be a way for people to communicate. In reality, it's so far toward the bottom of the sheet that very few people ever take the time to look at that. And you may choose, if you wish, to use the life sketch for that same purpose, where it is a little bit more visible to people coming into the database. Here in this area of the person page, we have our research boxes. The one at the top is Research Helps, where FamilySearch actually kind of hands you on a silver platter a record that it's almost certain belongs to this individual. And in a way it's doing that in order to entice you to come and look at more records that it has, that it probably needs a little bit more help to determine are actually that family. Then we can physically search for records by choosing one of these databases that we have chosen to subscribe to. We're all subscribers to FamilySearch, or we wouldn't be in here to begin with. But you may have chosen to sign up for Ancestry or Find My Past or MyHeritage. And if that's the case, you can also search from here on those databases to a limited extent. FamilySearch is usually where we go, and that will help you find more records. We will be spending more time on that, as I said, in the future class. For those of us who want to keep some record, some backup data on our family groups that are displayed in FamilySearch, one alternative would be to print family group sheets with or without your sources, so that you have a fallback position in the event somebody changes something about your person page, and you'll have to go searching through a file drawer full of data in order to figure out what the right information is, unless you have something printed. Perhaps a different solution many of you would be willing to entertain is simply to store your same data in a different database online or in a software program on your personal computer. But many people still feel comfortable having a printed record, and there's nothing wrong with that if you have the space to store them and the organizational skills to make it possible to go find them again. Please notice that FamilySearch actually tracks every change that is made by any contributor to this person page, and you can literally click on Show All and see a long list of things that people have done to that person page, beginning with when she was first added to the database. This is handy in places like you want to see who made that change, you want to find out who that contributor is, who's working on this individual, etc. And finally, we have what we call our tools box. This is where we find possible duplicates in the database, or at least that was the goal. It was intended to be where we find them. Lots of times we find them through the children. We find that a child has two sets of parents and they are duplicates, and so we're able to merge them. Or we find that in a family group a child appears twice, and so those are duplicates and they need to be merged. There are many ways to find duplicates, and one of our coming classes will be about merging those duplicates. It says delete person is unavailable. That's because I did not create Ruth Lorraine Werdeman. Only the person who created her can delete her from this database, which is a good thing, because in FamilySearch, everyone can see everything about every deceased ancestor, whether they're their family or not, and they have the ability to change something. So there are some big advantages with FamilySearch, one of which is you are building on all of the collective data that other people have chosen to put in the database. So you're not starting at the bottom of your tree trunk and trying to get clear out to the tip in 1632. You're actually just putting in information about your immediate family and attempting to connect it to the data that's already in the database, and then to further contribute to that data to make it even more accurate. The downside is that everyone can work on anybody. As a general rule, they don't do that, and they're certainly discouraged from doing that. But because of that, many of us believe that we need some way of backing up our data. Okay. Are there any questions about the orientation to our person page in this part of our class? Okay. Let's see if I can quickly skip down here to here from the current slide. Okay, so now we are starting the third and final section of our class tonight. And this part of our class has to do with just what I was talking about just now. If you're starting out in FamilySearch as a new researcher or a researcher who is just coming into your family history research, to try to contribute to what others have already done, how do you connect your immediate family, including your deceased ancestors, to the data that's already in FamilySearch? That's what I'm trying to reveal by this graphic right here. We're not creating the whole tree, we're adding our branch to the tree. There are two good ways to find your closest deceased ancestor who's already in Family Tree. And I'm choosing to reveal both of those to you and discuss them very briefly, along with the advantages and disadvantages that I see in both of those strategies. One alternative, just lost my cursor, one alternative is to search for your closest deceased ancestors who are starting with your grandfathers. What does this mean? You don't want to start with a living ancestor because no one but you can see the living people you have put in FamilySearch. So you want to go to someone who is deceased. And chances are your parents are too close to you to be in the database yet. That might not prove to be true, but usually if you skip them, you'll be well advised. So you could go to your grandparents. You've got 4 grandparents, presumably. Some of you might have more if you had adoptive parents, for example. But at least 4. And I recommend that you start with your grandfathers because more people know the correct names of men than of women in the database. You're more likely to find a hit. One advantage of this strategy is that you ultimately have less chance of adding duplicate people to family tree because you are not adding people, you are searching for people, and then from those people you are coming back toward yourself. A disadvantage of this strategy is that it's time consuming and you need to check for each of your ancestral lines. So maybe you find one of your grandfathers or your grandmothers, but you find nothing in the other 3 of your ancestral lines. Then you need to go back still one more generation in each of those lines and search for those people. And it can be time consuming. And please note that even though this method is the best at preventing adding new duplicate people to the database, you still are likely to discover some duplicate people later. The search engine in FamilySearch is very specific. If 2 people have the same name and one of them has an initial for a middle name and the other has a full middle name written out, it will not recognize those 2 people as duplicates. If either of their names are spelled differently, say that their surnames are spelled differently, there is a very high probability that FamilySearch will not immediately recognize those 2 people as duplicates. However, as you begin to build your family structure in FamilySearch, FamilySearch gets smarter about your family, and it's starting to look for family relationships as well as individual people. And then it will start discovering more duplicates for you. That's why I say you may still discover duplicate people later. Originally you were searching for one person, now you're searching for a family group that includes that person, and FamilySearch will discover more duplicates on that basis. Okay, that's one strategy. You search for your closest deceased ancestors starting with your grandfathers. A second strategy that I see many people use, and that in fact I'm going to share with you tonight myself, is to go ahead and add your closest deceased ancestors one at a time to the database, and then carefully check for duplicates after each addition and be prepared to merge them. This is highly recommended for new contributors to FamilySearch whose families have recently immigrated from other nations, where it's much less likely that their ancestors are already in FamilySearch until several generations back, maybe not at all. If you're dealing with someone who has come from China or someplace, the high probability is they're never going to be able to connect to data that's in FamilySearch. And so there's no point in starting them on the other strategy. But in this case, you would be able to give them the satisfaction of beginning to enter their family right away and then check to see if that person is in FamilySearch. And the disadvantage of this strategy, the only disadvantage that I know of, is that the person who is adding that individual to FamilySearch may not yet feel comfortable discovering and merging duplicate people. And they have to be able to do that, because if they create a whole new branch of a tree that duplicates another branch of a tree, the odds are they're going to assume at each generation these people are not in the database, and they're going to put them there. And as you begin to build on those generations, you get more and more and more duplicate people who then ultimately have to be merged. Okay. So here's the suggested searching sequence for that first strategy, where I said you were perhaps going to start with your grandparents, and that you might want to start with your grandfathers. Excuse me. I would suggest that you first search for your deceased grandfather. Let's say that we're looking for our father's line. We would search for our deceased grandfather and then our deceased great-grandfather. Then we would come to our deceased great-grandfather on our father's mother's line. And we would come to our deceased grandmother, and then we would go back to great-grandmother and great-grandmother. Once again, the reason for this strategy is that men's names are more commonly correct in FamilySearch than are women's. Let's go see this in practice. I have an example for you. Once again, we're going to use that same find button that we did before, and we're going to actually put in this person's name, and as much as we know about her, well, I'll be more specific, a little bit that we know about her. We don't want to put in so much information about this person that we convince FamilySearch she doesn't exist in the database. And then we're going to find her and try to connect her to her parents. When I do that, should be able to. Why can't I do that? There we go. Here's FamilySearch. All right. No, I don't want to come right here. Let me come back up to search. I want to show you how I got to her. I want to go to Family Tree. I want to go to Find. No, I want to go to Find. And the person I'm looking for is named Emily Jane Hartland. It's taken me to the landscape view of my pedigree chart. That's not what I want. I want to go to Find by name or by ID number. I don't know her ID number. She is someone who was born in England and died in Duluth, Minnesota. I know her father's first name, and I know that her mother's was born in a funny little town called Tooting, England. So let's put what we can in here. Her name was Emily Jane Hartland, not caps, A-R-T. Missed the R. There we go. See this little box right here that I skipped? That's if you want it only to look for that name exactly as you typed it. So I always skip that box. This is a female person. She was born where? In England. That's really all I know. And it's going to want to say England, United Kingdom. I'll let it do that. She was born in 1870. She had a father. Once again, it wants me to match that. She had a father whose name was Edward. Last name was the same as hers, Hartland. And her mother's first names were Sarah Ann. Don't know her maiden name. I think that's all I do know. Let's try finding her. I'm looking over here in the parents section because all of these people are potentially who I'm looking for. I'm looking for a father named Edward and a mother, Sarah Ann. Don't see her there. It was offering me more pages at the bottom. Probably you saw that. I'm not choosing to use those. Instead, I'm going to search for her mother, her father, and put in his wife. Hartland is a male, not a female, was born in England in about 1845, had a spouse whose first name was Sarah Ann, don't know her last name, Edward Hartland. I don't know his mother's name. Let's see if we find them. Sarah Ann Brigland. Let's see where Sarah Ann was born, because I'm looking for somebody who was born in Tooting, England. Streatham and Tooting, Graveney, Surrey, England. I think that's Our Lady. Let's go to that person page. And there is no daughter named Emily Jane. That could simply mean that no one knows that they had a daughter named Emily Jane. So I'm going to add a child who is, in this case, my direct ancestor, which actually is my mother-in-law's direct ancestor. Her name was Emily Jane Hartland. She is a female. She is deceased. She was born 7 June 1870 in England. And she died after 1913 in Duluth, St. Louis, Minnesota. Let's see if we can add her as a child to this family. This is the person I'm trying to create. And it's found her in the database already. Here she is right here. Notice the date and location are the same, and her spouse is the man I'm expecting to see. So I didn't need to add my mother's grandmother to the database. I found her here, just from the information I had about her parents. Now Emily Jane Hartland is correctly listed as the oldest of the children of Edward Hartland and Sarah Ann Brigland, and I'm off to the races and ready to go. If we look at these people, just from their summary cards, we can tell that their family ordinances have not been completed. This one has. These have not, etc. So if you were in this situation and you were LDS, you would already have a little bit of temple work to do if you chose to offer those ordinances to those deceased ancestors. Okay, do you have any questions about searching for your closest deceased ancestors in FamilySearch in order to connect your data to what's already in the database? Okay, so far? And of course, we will write down the ancestor's name and person ID, and we will repeat that process until we've found our closest deceased ancestor in each of our remaining family lines. So just finding one of them and then building their entire network of family members from that is not going to work. You need to actually look at each of the ancestral lines. You might have, for example, 4 or 8 lines to look at. No questions? So in this class, Class 2, what we've covered is getting a username and password for FamilySearch. And we've offered you a handout that would help you retrieve a lost username or password if you knew that you'd had one before and you couldn't recall it, or to change your username, password, or email address. The second part of this class was on essentials of navigating the person page, just as an overview for folks who are not yet familiar with this database and how you get around in it. And the third section of our class was 2 strategies to connect your closest deceased ancestors to data that's already in Family Tree. And I'm giving you a homework assignment in anticipation of Class 3. I'd like to challenge you to search for and find your closest deceased ancestor already in Family Tree in at least one of your 4 grandparents' ancestral lines. If you're someone who's been a member of a family that's done a lot of family history research and captured that research in FamilySearch, you may find that it's quite easy for you to do that. But some of us will have a longer journey because we haven't had the benefit of those previous researchers. Might have to go back 3 or 4 generations to find people who are in there. But sooner or later, your line will almost certainly converge with research that other researchers have been working on for years, and you're going to be the beneficiary of their hard work. Coming in our next class is the data entry skills that are unique to Family Tree. We're going to practice adding a name and name variations, including titles or suffixes. We're going to add a definite or a best guess date and what they call standardizing it, which means that the database can read it and match it with someone else's entry. We're going to learn how to add a definite or best guess place and standardize it. Since we're not doing that stuff tonight, I'm hoping that you will not choose to add new people to the database just yet. What I'd like to encourage you to do is to find your closest deceased ancestors, write down their names and ID numbers as you find them in FamilySearch, and come back next week to learn how to put the data in correctly, because you may find yourself otherwise having to go back and redo some of your work. And I'm hoping that we can help you to do it right the first time and not have to take that step. Another part of Class 3 is adding people and events to a family. We're going to add the first or another spouse to an individual. We're going to learn how to add a marriage event, or like a divorce or an annulment, for example. And we're going to discover that you can add a child and the relationship of that child to those parents. So it is possible to indicate that a child is a stepchild of the father, or that he is an adopted child, for example, for those of you who may be interested in those situations. We hope that you will choose to join us for that class. I'll turn the time back to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Carol. You did an outstanding job. And I'm encouraged about the new things that you've been able to show us. Hopefully anybody watching this video can follow through. If you have any questions, here on this screen, notice that my name is Mike Goodmanson, and you can call me at my cell phone, 509-845-0044, and I'll help you get the information that you need. You can download these handouts if you have not already done it from www.tinyurl.com/Taming Goliath. And it will have instructions on how to download those handouts. Plus, in a next day or so, you can watch this video again. It will also be on that website, and you can download and watch the video and stop and start as you're reviewing the information. Again, thank you, Carol. I don't see anybody else with a question at this time. Thanks again, everyone. We will end this meeting and encourage you to come back next week.